this doesn't work. But it looks like it's working. So give this a minute to warm up, see who's around. It's not very warm around here for June, but that's not why we're here. Yeah, there was actually snow up in Idaho and Oregon today, this morning, and right on the Nevada border. So that's interesting. I guess there's snowstorm watches for places like 12 inches of snow. Oh man, so a little chilliness coming down. It happens, but it was definitely windy and cold today. Um, but not that cold to interfere with the garden or anything. But what's going on? So Father's Day message, the title. And I kind of wanted to do this video Saturday and put it out yesterday, and I couldn't say it right. I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't think of how I wanted to put it together. I didn't even want to go over the top. I didn't want to be hyperbolic. I didn't want to do a lot of things. I didn't think I could do it right. Fortunately, our good friend Wayne at The Ungrateful Peasant did an excellent job of summarizing, or putting, not even summarizing, detailing what I wanted to talk about, and doing a primer on exactly the topic. And primarily that is the incoming draft, the impending draft, the imposition of a draft on all those young folks out there, and a lot of them are your kids and grandkids. And if you haven't seen Wayne's video, here in a minute we'll do a separation video here. So, but Wayne did a video talking about the implementation of the draft and kind of some implications and just all the stuff that's going behind this World War III talk, right? All this, you know, they're going to start it, and all the other things they're trying to use to hide the economic situation, primarily. How they got to get rid of productive people, get people that are dependent on the system more prevalent, more numerous. Those people that are dependent on the system out there, and everybody that's somewhat independent, get rid of them. And his thought is that the draft will do just that. It's just basically going to kill off a generation, like it usually does. I think one of our big problems is we didn't learn from the past. There was a generational divide in Vietnam that should have never happened. We didn't learn from the Civil War. The draft riots and everything else that went with that. People kind of just brushed it off, and then it continued to build as they went into the First World War, which was the first real bankers' war for us, right? But the opposition and resistance to this has to be unequivocal, if I'm saying that word right. Let me see if I get the chat up here. It's like somebody checked in. So as Wayne kind of lines it out there, that they got to do something to distract from the economics, and what better way than war? And we all knew that was kind of coming. We've been talking about that. We have long discussed and been ideologically sound on this topic of the draft is immoral to begin with. If you've just recently followed along, first and foremost, right off the bat, if this country or any country can't decide to go to war and get people to volunteer, it's not worth doing. It's not worth fighting. Whoa, something. So that, and first and foremost, we've been on here a decade plus, has been our message. We kind of messed up the way we separated generations in the Vietnam War. Previous to that, obviously they convinced everybody in World War II that it was okay. World War One was the first real test of, and there were draft riots and protests at those times, even back then. But now we're coming around to where we are now. And as Wayne lays out, they've expanded the parameters. There's the inclusion of women, which they're kind of tiptoeing around, but it sounds like it's going to happen. And the thing is, people are going to get themselves. So I don't want to get to the technical side of it. Bottom line, uh, go to Wayne's video if you want to watch it first and get the meat of everything. And when he starts talking about make a plan, then come back here. That's what I want to talk about next. The making a plan of what you're going to do when they come for your children, and as he highlights, your neighbor's children, your community's children, what you're going to do to help defend them against this. Because it's really, the fight is up to us. And that's the Father's Day message of this. It's up to the dads. It's up to the fathers to make this not happen. The politicians might pass it, but they can't enforce it. And the enforcers are really going to be the ones that eat this. And that's where it's going to be ultimately rubber meets the road, right? And I don't want some of the bigger channels, if you call them bigger channels, several of them that I've seen have kind of downplayed this. That it's not really that big a deal. The draft's always been there. They're not going to start the draft. It's not impending, yada, yada, yada. First off, the NDAA they attach it to shouldn't be authorized anyway, but here we are. So some people were trying to downplay it for their own agendas, which the war agenda is always prevalent. But Wayne talks about making a plan for what you're going to do and how you're going to protect your communities, kids basically, and young adults from this, because it's really up to us. And I can't emphasize that enough, I don't think. We can't just say, hey, if they're going to submit to this, hey, you've got to provide the support to give them the framework to know that they're supported to resist it to begin with. Nobody can do this alone. This goes back to the whole, this is the same as any other government overreach, infringement, BLM, land grab, stealing cows, stealing water. Speaking of water, see the Idaho thing going on right now. Potato farmers, if you're not tracking. The whole bureaucratic edifice of Washington, D.C. is finding every method it can to steal your wealth and prosperity and your posterity. So take that for what it is. And whatever plan you've put in place to resist all the other government tyranny, it's going to be in effect. It's going to apply in this case. Your everything you can think of, food, water, support structures, community, network, all of it still applies across the board. The thing you need to understand that one thing, let me make sure I slow down a little bit and get this in, because Ramnud is trying to get this in and get it recorded here, because I don't want to take the time to upload it, so I'm lazy. This should be the most unifying thing in a generation. Where everybody was September 12th, 2001 is where we should be with this, even more so, because the way things are now, half people don't have kids because they don't want kids, and they're messing around with people of the same sex and can't have kids to begin with, or they're trying to steal somebody else's kids and call them their kids. Another subject, which the bureaucracy in DC is encouraging and supporting and paying for, because it creates less resistance to them. This should be a unifying factor across ideologies, political beliefs, etc., religious beliefs, any of it, right? There's nobody out there that should support the idea of imposing a draft to go fight another land war in Europe. Primarily is what we're talking about, right? If you support that, please unsubscribe. I've gained a lot of subscribers lately, so maybe this will thin the herd a lot. And by a lot, I mean like 20. I've been stuck at 2,800 for 10 years. If you support that, it's probably not the place for you anyway. But you have to find a way to get that discussion across to other people who may not be aligned, but who may not seem aligned. You may not feel aligned because of whatever other political thing they might think or you are or are not. A lot of people have misconceptions because everybody's stuck in the blue and red teams. We've got to get past that, especially on this case. This is not. It's not even. Everything should focus on diminishing the power of Washington D.C. as a bureaucratic governmental entity. That's what this all should all be about. Nothing else. Um, so whatever you can do to get through to other people who have kids that are impacted by this, I would say do it. Uh, find your method and technique of discussing this, bringing it up, whatever. You know what works for you, and that's where I really can't tell you what to do or say, but find out what works for you. A lot of people are going to be hung up in the patriotic side of it's the patriotic. The government calls, you got to answer. There's going to be a lot of people in that mindset, and really, whatever the boomers say, disregard it. We really got to disregard their whole thing. Well, we went and did our part in Vietnam or whatever. Disregard it. We have to get out of that mindset. I don't mean to offend anybody, because I know there's some guys that are on here that were in that situation and they did do that, and they did what they had to do. This is not degrading what they did, but we have to get past that and not allow it to happen again. Um, and it's up to us, the older people, the older Gen Xers, younger boomers for the most part, generationally wise, in the way they describe it. Um, so when Wayne talks about a plan, you got to go into those thoughts of what you've already put in place, and it could get pretty in depth, because they're not going to send people to your door. They're not going to send people to confiscate or anything. They're just going to turn stuff off. They're going to turn off your bank account. They're going to turn off your income, whatever it may be. You may think you're safe with your employer. Unless you're getting paid hard cash, you're likely at risk, because they're going to threaten their business with harboring people who are against the cause. At some point, it could get to that. That's where this is going to head up to. Any resistance is going to be viewed as Abraham Lincoln's term, insurrection, right? And you'll be shunned from society in many different ways. We have to be ready for that, hands down. So whoever you're sheltering or assisting to avoid said draft, they will come after you first to make an example of you. They won't even go after the person they're trying to draft. They'll go after the support people first, because they know that's the real, who has the wealth, who has the influence. It's the older generation, right? The younger generation's kind of in the middle, caught in the middle of this whole thing. So you have to give them that baseline to work off of and have support off of. I've been adamant about this for a long time in here. I have talked about it. You're not getting my kids. You're definitely not getting my daughters. If they want to volunteer, that's kind of on them. I can't go beyond that. They have free will. But if you're going to try and force somebody, yeah, you're going to have problems. But economically, supporting yourself and others and them, when you lose ability to support yourself, is going to be an issue. You have to have wealth outside the system, which we know what that is. If you don't, you haven't been paying attention to this channel. And ultimately, it's going to be much like the founders. You're going to lose pretty much everything you have at some point. So be ready for all that. If you're gonna be about it, you got to understand what it's going to be about, because it's not going to be pretty. And some of this is just maybe sending a message to people that we do control you, but it does seem very much like they want to implement this plan and have large-scale ground war to just thin the herd, to eliminate people that are not beneficial to them, while they bring in hordes and hordes of thousands, by the thousand, of people to undermine the very underlying fabric of the country. There's no other way around it. You see this video after video. Vaughn down there on the border has done this video after video of this invasion. There's videos out now regularly. It's just by the dozens, and military age males. If they don't actually physically cause physical harm to the country, they are going to undermine the fabric just through their sheer presence of the economy and everything else. between the government supporting them and everything else. There's the article about the lack of housing because of the immigrant situation. Like, hey, the government keeps buying and giving them stuff. So that's all being torn apart while the people who are registered for the draft, who are going to be mandated to register for this draft, get nothing except for being told what to do and where to go, because you're supposedly their property. So yeah, I thank Wayne for doing that video. I need to tag him in the description just so he knows. If you would feel so inclined to do your own video, that would be great. But I really think the way this is gonna go down really needs to be face to face, off social media, with the people you know and the people that are involved. So if you want to amplify Wayne's message, and share the video, that's one thing. But really, you don't have to. I mean, obviously, doing a video like this is limited effect. It's what you do on the ground that matters. I just wanted to bring attention to it because I think it's important. And like I said, there's been big channels that seem to downplay the importance of this, and that this is actually something that's going to happen. They've literally said, like, people are just fear-mongering about the draft. It's not actually going to happen. I mean, we've been talking about this building war for a decade, and here we are on the verge of committing. We've semi-already committed forces, because there are probably people that are in the Ukrainian forces who are actually U.S. Service members. I'm like 90% sure of that. So they're already committed to it, for their own agenda and their own prosperity. And there's some other agendas about controlling the food supply in there too, because Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, and they couldn't let that be an independent country. So take that for what you will. Do not let this be a divisive issue, other than divide. The only thing that should be divided is the American people from the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. That's the only division line we should have, us against them. So that's the only thing I would say hard and fast about this whole thing, is don't allow it to divide any other groups or people or ideologies, political, religious, or otherwise, because they don't matter. The only thing that matters is us versus them. So I saw some people check in. I appreciate it. Andy's gut. What's up, Andy? The man-child is doing his thing. He's new thing. It's a new thing every day. Warsaw Patriot, how you doing? Two most important things, right? Amen. Greeting, Howie. How you doing? Good to see you. Corsair Trainers joined us. Howie says, dig a cave, get goats for milk, cheese. Right, you got all the elements right there, Howie. That all helps. Hopefully it doesn't. I'm not sure what type of hot you're talking about, but if it gets that hot, I don't know that any of us will make it. Not that I'm not all. There's a lot of mine shafts around here. Maybe those would be beneficial, but it's got to go beyond self-sustaining, because you're going to be probably removed from any domicile that you have forcefully if you support such a cause, unless it builds up support in your area enough to be its own little enclave, right? So kind of like San Francisco became, and some of these bigger inner cities became in certain, I guess you'd call lawless areas. We got to build areas like that too. Some areas are already like that to a certain degree, depending on what kind of culture you're talking about. So you just got to know where you're at. That's where you got to talk that one-to-one, face-to-face. This electronic communication isn't necessarily going to get it. Is that a big boomer? Sounds like a big plane. I don't see it though. Sounds kind of like one of the big guys, not like bigger than commercial airline guys. So I'll leave you with that. That's about 20 minutes of running my mouth. I want to get the word out. Do go check out Wayne's video in the description. Go watch it, listen to his words, and especially when he talks about making a plan. That's the highlight. It should be very similar. Don't overthink it. It should be very similar to your other resisting government tyranny plans. You could probably just rename it Total Government Tyranny Plan. Government resistant tyranny plan. Not to take the Resist the Tyranny channel name too far, but that's what it is. Um, I mean, it's again, it's one of those things. Like, we all know at some point there's going to have to be somebody who's a martyr, because nobody's want to step out uh, individually unless they have to. And this is one of those times where, when you get the kids involved, that's when somebody's really going to step out of line, right? Um, so be ready to support those people or persons as needed. I would Don't try to, like, hide and, like, well, they shouldn't have done it. Like, no, that's the line in the sand. You don't come after people's kids. You know, that's the bright, huge line, and it needs to be. And we messed up 40 years, 50 years, 60 years ago now, when we allowed to have it happen the last time, and they made it generational separation. They separated two generations because we didn't know better. So we cannot allow that to happen. A lot of vets that are on the Twitter sphere are adamantly against it. So I know that there's a common mindset among people who have done their time. Unlike, because most of us know that draftees are just terrible. There's no motivation. If you don't have motivation in a unit, it's a bad system. I did a whole poll on the Twitter thing here. Basically saying there's no good outcome there's no reason for the draft. So I guess I'll leave you with that. Again, watch Lane's video. In this instance, prep harder. Prep harder and live free, because that's what it's going to come down to. All right, y'all be good, YouTube.